I'm Linda van Tilburg for Biznews. We have the leader of the Freedom Front Plus, Dr. Pieter Groenewald, in the Biznews studio. Hi, Pieter. Thanks for joining us.
Morning, Linda, and thank you for the opportunity.
Well, that brings me to the whole issue of opposition politics and coalitions. It seems that thus far, it's not been working really well, any coalitions or efforts to get you guys together, the Moonshot Pact that the DA is talking about, or, and it seems there's a lot of mistrust. Do you think that the opposition can get their act together and with the Freedom Front Plus support this a grand coalition of the opposition?
Well, I think we don't have any option on that, but we must now be realistic. We must remember that in South Africa, coalitions are actually something new when it comes to politics. We in the Freedom Front Plus, since 1994, we have the proportional electoral system set. In the end, because one of the strongest features of proportional electoral systems are actually the forming of coalitions. So that is very important. And because of the fact, and I call it, we are going into a learning curve in terms of coalitions, a learning curve for the politicians themselves, as well as the electorate. We must remember that the electorate, they have a simple argument because they don't understand coalitions. They say, well, if you're in a coalition, why do I have to vote for your party? Then we can all vote for only one party. So we have to go through that process. But now we must also remember, yes, the Johannesburg Metro Coalition issue, it's bad. It is, can I say, very detrimental for the perception of the functionality of coalitions. But we must also remember there are 38 other coalitions that is very strong and it really works. But we must also understand that the ANC government know that the coalition government is a threat to them and that they can lose to be the government. Therefore, they will also do from their side anything they can possibly do to derail coalitions amongst opposition parties. I mean, in Johannesburg, we had the situation of allegations that they actually bribed some councillors. The going rate was between 1 and 2 million rand. That is what is said. So, yes, but we have progress on these coalitions. I am part of a group of political leaders where we have meetings. In fact, we have one this evening, and where we see how we can find each other. But we must also remember that coalitions can only actually be formed after an election. You don't form a coalition before an election. And the view from the Freedom Front Plus is that we must say these are the political parties that is actually stating very clearly, and they sign a document to say that we will not go into any government with the ANC or the EFF after the election, so that the electorate can see these are the political parties that will not go with the ANC. After that, you can have broad principles, for instance, upholding of the Constitution. We believe in the rule of law, broad issues that is important. And then each and every political party must go and campaign to get the maximum of their supporters to vote. And I say to vote because that is very important. And many people will say, but it's not possible to beat the ANC. I say it is because if you go and look at the statistics, you will find that at the moment the ANC is governing with a 58% majority in the National Assembly Parliament, but they only have the support of 27% of eligible voters in South Africa. Only 27. The problem is the people, they do not register as voters and they do not vote. So we say that we must activate those eligible voters to come forward and to vote. And because of the proportional electoral system, you don't divide votes. each and every vote counts. It works in a simple terms on a percentage. If you get 10% of the votes, you get 10% of the seats in parliament. So you can campaign and get the maximum of your supporters, and I do believe that the ANC will be below 50% and that we as opposition parties can form a coalition to get the ANC out of government.
You mentioned that you're part of this opposition group that's meeting tonight, as you said. Is the DA part of that group?
Yes, yeah, it's the DA. The normal partners are there. In fact, at this moment, there are 10 political parties that is part of this grouping. I personally say that we must be careful. You don't need too many parties in a coalition because that creates instability in the coalition. The ideal is, say, 2 or 3 political parties. Personally, my experience and from an academic point of view, you can go up to 5 or 6. But you must also have trustworthy partners in a coalition. And because of the fact that it is something new, and unfortunately, specifically when it comes to the Johannesburg Metro, that it appears that people and political leaders are more interested in positions than, for instance, in the real issues and service delivery of the electorate. Yes, we have an agreement, and it sounds good on paper, but political leaders must make a mind shift. I always say that coalitions require very, very strong political leaders in this sense that it is quite natural that a political leader wants the best for his or her political party. But the moment you go into a coalition, you must compromise and you must realize as a leader that you can't have everything. You then have to ensure that the interest of the electorate is the most important. And that's a mind shift. And I'm afraid not all political leaders understand that, but we work on that to ensure that we have a stable coalition government after 2024 elections.
The Herman Mashaba seems to not be trusting the DA, that they will not, after the election results come out, form a coalition with the ANC. Do you have the same perception?
Well, what I say is that the DA came forward with their Moonshot Pact. The approach was wrong. And I said it to John Steenhuisen, the leader of the DA. You did not consult before the time. You just come forward, you announce it at your conference, and then you expect everybody to buy into the concept. That's not acceptable because I personally say that they made the moonshot the trademark of the election of the DA. We will have to change it. My proposal, for instance, is that the name must change. And I am not prepared, and no other party will be prepared to lose its own identity. And we must not lose that identity. Because remember, you will get voters who will vote only for their political party and no other party. And if you lose your identity, we're going to get the people, they are not going to vote as they should be. But meaning they will stay away and you will have a very low percentage of turnout of the electorate. So that is important. Those are issues we have to work on. Unfortunately for the DA, they are on record where they said that if the good guys win with the ANC conference in December last year, they will go into a coalition because they say it is better with the ANC and the DA than the ANC and the EFF. They was using that concept. They actually use the EFF to create fear. We call it fear politics. And the DA will have to learn. As far as I'm concerned, you talk about trust. If the DA is willing to sign a document to say they will not go in any form of with the ANC after the election, then it is on their conscience to keep to that. And I can assure you that if they do not comply to that after the election, the electorate will deal with them in the election after 2024, the 2029 election. So I will be satisfied if they sign such documents and agreement, a memorandum of understanding, call it whatever you want. But we must remember one thing. And I must be honest, when it comes to the Action SA, Herman Mashaba and the DA, that is bad blood. I once said it's like a family where there was a family feud because for the majority, and especially the top management of the Action SA, are members or previous members of the Democratic Alliance, and for some other reason, they got fed up with the DA, and now they formed their own political party. But we also deal with that, and they will have to understand that if they really want to save South Africa, as they say, that they will have to get over their differences and ensure that we work as a team. But again, I say you must keep your own identity so that the electorate can still distinguish between different political parties and ensure that the maximum of voters go and vote in 2024, then we can win the ANC.
This is a question that I'm often asked by overseas analysts about the opposition in South Africa, and it concerns you and it concerns John Steenhuisen. If the opposition parties do manage to get the majority of the votes in the 2024 election, can a white man seriously be the new leader of South Africa? Would that be accepted by the majority of people?
The answer is, and I already said it in the newspapers, no. I don't think it should be a white man. I'm on record in the media in South Africa where I said it doesn't mean that the strongest political party in the coalition's leader is necessarily the president. We must get a competent person, and I am very realistic. I said I'm not politically correct. If you want the voters from the ANC to get away from the ANC, you're not going to get them away with a white potential president. It's a fact. People normally shy away from race in South Africa. Race plays a very important role in South Africa. And yes, I was strongly criticized because I said that, but I keep my view on that. And yes, the people asking that and the analysts asking that, they are quite correct with the analysis. And it's, if a white man, if it appears that the leader of the strongest opposition party, let's take John Steenhuisen, if they're forming a coalition, he's going to be the president, then of course, what the ANC is going to say, oh, you're now going back to apartheid. And they use a term, they call it boss, it means boss. They said, are you going to vote for the boss again? I know they do it because people speak to me, they talk to me. And therefore, I already said that, and in the coalition negotiations, I already said, well, you may differ from me, but if you want to get the voters from the ANC, forget about a white president. But we must get, there are from the other political parties competent leaders. Let's take, for instance, I personally at this moment think that the Honorable Hlabisa, the leader of the Inkatha Freedom Party, is an intelligent man, and he's a good candidate for presidency in South Africa. So there are other leaders that can be a good president in South Africa.
Dr. Pieter Groenewald, thanks so much for speaking to me.
Thank you, Linda. Always a pleasure.